Welcome to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen and life coach Cindy Chavez here. Today is Tuesday, November the 20th, 2018. It is 8 a.m. New York time, 5 a.m. Los Angeles time, 1 p.m. London time, and 12 midnight Sydney, Australia time. And we have been having a little fun trying to connect to Facebook so we could connect to the live stream for the Facebook Law of Attraction Changed My Life group, and found that Facebook just isn't behaving properly this morning. I guess it's having a bad day. So we decided, okay, we're going to have to do just a regular podcast instead, which we have every ability to do. And this way we get to continue to talk about Neville. Today is Neville Day.
Yay. Neville, I love Neville Day.
Neville Day is always a good day, right? Actually, Neville Day happens for us 3 days a week.
That's true. Sometimes more.
Sometimes more, yeah. Sometimes when we do a weekend one. That's true, yeah. The only thing that's missing for me is my Neville book hasn't arrived yet. And I was looking at you know how you can check the shipping, right? I was checking the shipping to see where it's at. And it was originally coming from Georgia. It has now made it to Massachusetts. So it kind of overshot Connecticut a little bit. So it's got to work its way back. So hopefully it's going to arrive today. And then by tomorrow morning, I'll have my Neville book in hand.
Yay.
Yeah. But for the moment, I'll just go with, while I'm listening, because there are websites for all these different books that Neville did. I can just look at the website. But
yeah, I was going to say, that's the good thing is that we have it right in front of us if we need it on the computer.
Exactly.
Hopefully the computer works. Facebook's not working, but
it's funny.
It makes me realize how consistent Facebook is, because it's not something we ever really deal with so often, right?
Yeah. Well, you made an interesting comment before we got started here, while we were trying to connect to Facebook, about how you and your group had decided what would it do to your businesses if all of a sudden Facebook wasn't available. And here's what's happening: Facebook isn't available. It's like, wait a minute, what's going on here? Little law of attraction going on?
Yeah, it's actually a group of colleagues that are law of attraction group of coaches had that discussion on a Friday. Took the weekend off. Monday, Facebook was down, and we were all laughing that we were so powerful. All we did was discuss it, and it happened. Oh, wow.
It was funny too, because I was logged into Facebook and I was able to do some things, but I couldn't connect to the group with the live streaming. And so I tried clearing my cache and logging out, logging back in. And when I did, it says, Facebook will be back soon. Facebook is down for required maintenance right now. And we both commented, what? What do you mean? Facebook's never down for required maintenance.
Seriously, I just got the little thing from Facebook that said, it's your Facebook, you've been on Facebook 10 years. And I said,
right.
Wait, in the 10 years I've been on Facebook, I've never seen that message. So, on the other hand, with my bank, I've seen it often. With certain websites, I see it all, it's all the time consistent on a certain day or whatever. It's like, yeah, interesting.
Well, maybe that's what it is. I mean, it's been 10 years, right? They figured it was time to do some maintenance. So this is the 10-year maintenance cycle.
Wow, that would be kind of awesome.
Wouldn't it?
So dear. In my kitchen, we have an under the sink drinking water filter. And then to the left of the sink is the refrigerator. And then to the left of that is the laundry room. And for the past, I don't know, I want to say 2 weeks, maybe a week, we've been hearing this small beep in the kitchen.
A beep?
But we can't figure out where it's coming from. And we kept thinking it sounded like the washing machine. Just this little beep. And we thought, oh no, is there a fuse or something? Is one of the little circuits, because everything's all digital and everything. It's like, what is making that noise?
Right.
And so it would happen, and we were like, I'm always right here when it happens, but I'm not close enough to the laundry room to tell which machine it is. Then we thought, well, maybe it's the refrigerator. It's kind of like the beep that happens when you leave the door open too long, but the door wasn't open. We check it. We just couldn't figure it out. Everyone was just going nuts over here trying to figure it out. Last night, the cupboard door under the sink was open, and the beep happened. And it was like, oh, there's the beep. It's much louder than it usually is. It's the water filter beeping that we need to change the filter.
Oh, jeez.
And then everyone realized after the fact that the only time it beeps is when we're actually using the drinking water fountain.
Well, that's an interesting point, because we were talking also before the show about how it's so easy for us to be focusing on external causes whenever something isn't going the way we want them to, rather than looking internally to what our thought processes are. That's our habitual thing. It's got to be something out there. It's not me, right? It can't be what my thought process is doing. It's something out there. So we're always looking for those external causes, and yet, despite the fact that we're looking for the external causes, we miss so much of the information that's coming to us, and that continues to boggle my mind.
We're all doing the forehead slap.
Yeah, right.
None of us put together that we hear it when we're using the water filter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because in my mind, my story was it must be happening it's happening every, 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And I just happen to be here at the times I've walked in or it's just random and I just happen to hear it. But it's like recognizing that, oh my goodness, every time we turn the water on, it happens. But none of us had made that connection. And I think it's because, we're on autopilot so much.
True.
We walk in, fill up the water glass. I mean, we're thinking about something else and then beep. And it's like, wait, what was that? So anyway, we're happy to have solved the mystery.
You're right.
Beeping,
absolutely.
which means time to replace the filter, folks. All right.
Okay, now I got to tell you something. Here's a law of attraction story. We were just talking about how we couldn't log into Facebook, how Facebook isn't responding properly. And I realized to myself, I was just reiterating how we look outside. We look for external causes. So I said, well, wait a minute. I'm looking for an external cause here. What if I am looking at the fact that I keep expecting Facebook this morning to fail? What if I start saying to myself, you know what? Facebook can actually succeed. I just have to change the way that I'm thinking about this. So I did, and while you were talking there, I started focusing on, okay, well, I want Facebook to work. First of all, I want to be able to log in. And I focused on that for about 20 seconds or so. And then I tried hitting the button just as you finished your last statement, and I got a new screen. It now says, you entered an old password. Like, well, that's a different reaction. Let's see what happens if I try entering in what my password is. It actually says reset my password right now. So I'm going to reset the password. But now we're back to the other one. See, now look what happened here. Look what happened. I started shifting. I shifted toward the direction of Facebook working. I started to get stuff to work. I shifted back to it's not working again, and now it's not working again. I mean, how much more interaction do I need before I finally realize, it's me?
Well, it always is us because of our consciousness being the thing that creates everything, right?
Yeah.
And yet, I'm going to throw there's also, the idea that we're all connected. So everyone else is also responsible, yes?
Mm-hmm. That's true.
We're co-creating.
Yep.
Yeah. And then sometimes you just need to buy a new filter for the water thing, so the beeping will stop.
That's right. Well, that's also a change in thought process.
Yeah, well, I'm like, we do live in a world that's physical. At least we think we do. It seems to be. Then we recognize that, well, there's the idea that the atoms that make up the chair I'm sitting on are mostly just empty space,
mm-hmm.
even though the chair feels solid. So there is the physical aspect of the world, and there is the idea that sometimes we just need to take some kind of action in the real world and just deal with it.
Well, it's true.
And then other times, I have had a machine or a car seem to fix itself, It's
mm-hmm.
like, I don't know. Stop focusing on it and it seems to be better.
Well, it's true, though. It's true that we do interact with the world, and we need to interact with the world, and that's a good thing. I think the reminder here is getting into alignment first. Because when you get into alignment, you're focusing on what you want rather than what you don't want. I was having a conversation with a few people online. Somebody had posted something that was in the political wars, right? And I shouldn't have said anything at all, but I did make a comment that was something like, you realize you guys are focusing on what you don't want, right? And it's amazing how that ballooned into this huge fight. Just because I pointed out they weren't focusing on what they wanted.
You threw a grenade in there.
I did. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness. I mean, look how attached we all are to externalities. We're just attached to this stuff. It's crazy. Just crazy.
Well, and it's a bit of work to remember to focus on the solutions, focus on the positive, focus on what we want to create out of something that doesn't feel good. Mm-hmm. It takes some practice to do that.
Yeah.
And even those of us that are practiced recognize the struggle.
Oh, God, yes.
So throwing that energy grenade in there, too, makes people that aren't practiced. Were you just having fun, Walt?
Partly I was having fun. Partly I was actually reminding myself of something, which is I tend to do the same thing. Yeah. You know, I was, in a sense, I was projecting on them what I do. And I noticed it this morning. This morning I actually did something to deliberately shake up my routine because I didn't like the way my focus had been going in a number of different ways lately. And I knew I had to shake it up. So in the past, I've done mirror exercises, right? We've talked about that. And I've even recommended you can do mirror exercises looking into your smartphone. Well, you and I, when we connect to do the podcast each time, and all the other co-hosts as well, we do it through this Blue Jeans platform, which is a combination of audio and video. And one of the first things that happens when you open up the app is you see yourself on video. That's what, that's like the test to show, oh yeah, everything's working properly. Well, I thought to myself, well, there's a mirror. Right? It's showing me. I can see myself talking. So I started talking to myself in Blue Jeans this morning before you came into the Blue Jeans app. And I was doing mirror work into the app, and I was focusing on, okay, so what is it that I really want to focus on today? What is it that I really want in my life? Get all that other crap out of the way. What do I want? And then let's see if I can create my little vignettes, my little Neville vignettes of how it feels now that they've arrived. And I started to kind of work through them. Right now, Louise is kind of under the weather, so I was imagining her feeling her normal self and being energetic and up and doing the things that she loves to do. I was thinking about my desire to have 10,000 listeners per episode or more, and just trying to imagine what it's like to have 10,000 people who are responding to you and interacting with you faster than you could possibly do while you're on for an hour. I was thinking about and imagining what it's like when I inform each of you guys, hey, we made to my goal 10,000 listeners per episode. And we're getting 10,000 listeners every time that we're doing one of these episodes. And all of you guys were saying, it's amazing. It's just fantastic. And that's the vignette I was playing. And I just started working through those, and I thought to myself, isn't it fantastic? I found a way. I have this tendency, like everybody has, to look outside for answers. But this time, while I was looking outside, I used looking outside as a way to look back inside. I used the camera with the Blue Jeans platform to look back inside myself.
I love it.
I found a great way to redirect my attention. So hopefully I can keep doing that one.
I could hear in your voice as you were describing the vignette, the excitement building.
Yeah.
Yeah, the energy definitely shifts, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, let's do a few announcements before we dive in.
Absolutely, because
we're talking about growing the audience.
Well, especially considering that we're having trouble getting into the Facebook platform to live stream there, because people are perhaps looking for us to do that, but the fact is we can't always get in, apparently. But if you're subscribed to the podcast, you never miss anything. So this is like another reason to become a subscriber. And if you're not yet a subscriber, it's really easy to do. Almost every episode that we have that has a description associated with it now has links in it, depending on whether you're an Android user or an iPhone user or an iPad user. Just click on the appropriate one, and it literally just walks you through the entire process of subscribing and having all the stuff come automatically to your device whenever we publish it. But in case you find that a little bit difficult, just go to the homepage of our website, loatoday.net, and you'll find great big icons there to click on that will just walk you through the process. So either way, it's really simple. If you're a little bit more sophisticated and you have some idea of how podcast subscriptions work, just go to your favorite app and type in LOA Today, and it'll pop right up for you. But whatever way you do it, just make sure you subscribe, because, boy, you don't want to miss any of the episodes. They're all really great, and they all really do give you your daily dose of happy. And then once you get the daily dose every time that you're listening, by the way, when you subscribe, it helps if you listen. It's a funny thing. Subscribing all by itself is not enough. It's kind of like, okay, I'm going to do my intentions every day. I'm going to do my mirror exercises, or I'm going to do my affirmations. And then you do them for one day. Like, no, you have to keep doing them.
Right, exactly.
Well, the same thing is true as being a listener of LOA Today. You got to keep listening to them. So make sure you keep listening to the podcast. And then as you're doing that, type on social media, post something about how you're listening to LOAtoday.net so that other people can find out about it. Because can you imagine tens of thousands of people actually listening and getting their daily dose every day and living their lives in a happier space and manifesting more of what they want and having that abundant life? I just,
yes,
that just,
I can't imagine it.
That's thrilling. I can feel the chill go up and down my spine when I think about that. So please help us chill our spines. Please help us get the word out by posting that you're listening. We really appreciate it. So there's our promos for the day. Oh, actually, there is one other thing I want to put out there. I'm thinking about adding this as a regular thing. We have been experimenting with a number of different ways to engage with people during the live part, during the live streaming and so forth. And by the way, I wanted to tell you about that, Cindy. Yesterday, Louis D'Souza had to beg out at the last minute. He had a family illness and couldn't do the podcast. And in the spirit of, well, the show must go on, I decided to try to do it solo and figure, well, maybe I can get some engagement from people who were live streaming too, not just to podcast listeners who are listening after the fact, but people who are actually listening live. So I plugged in, connected to the group, and said, Louis not going to be here today, but I thought I'd just kind of open it up, and if you have any questions, ask your questions, type them into the comments. And it took a few minutes, but people started asking questions. And I got to tell you, Cindy, they got really enthusiastic. In fact, we were getting a lot of simultaneous eyeballs on the podcast at that time, even though it was just me talking and trying to answer whatever questions I could answer. So I think we kind of tapped into something here. People just want that instant response on what their thing is. And I'm trying to ask, okay, well, how can we do that more often? Because clearly that's what people want, right? So.
Yes. We've been talking about that for almost a year.
Exactly. Exactly.
That let's get this going. Let's get a conversation going because we're happy to hear from you, to answer questions, to do some live coaching. I think Patty Framo has been doing some live coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw that event. Wonderful. Like, yeah, let's do this. Like, people are always coming in to the group, the different groups, to ask questions, right?
Right. Exactly.
I see lots of questions. So, yeah, we'd love to be in on that conversation for you to ask us.
And I just realized I didn't even complete my ask. I described what I've been doing. But my ask is this. If you want us to be doing something or focusing on a particular topic, or you have a suggestion about a particular kind of show you'd like to see us do, contact us. Send me an email. My email is walt@loatoday.net. Send an email and say, I love what you're doing, or I don't like what you're doing, or whatever, but here's an idea. I'd like you to do this. I mean, I'm thinking, Cindy, we're trying to come up with the ideas ourselves, but what if our audience came up with the ideas and passed them our way? I mean, how many more ideas can you get that way, first of all? And second of all, they could probably come up with stuff we haven't even thought of.
Right, and that's the important thing, is that, when we all put our minds together, it's like the idea of a mastermind, right? It's like
right.
All the minds together create a mind that's greater than the sum of its parts. So we'd love to hear from you because, there are things we haven't thought of that you'd like to hear from us, and we want to know what they are so that we can do it.
Yeah. So send an email or reach out to us on Facebook or tweet us or something. But just send a message saying, hey, how about this? And then tell us what this is.
We'll be happy to answer those questions. Maybe plan a whole show around something someone suggests. Who knows? It's possible.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's very good.
Yeah.
And actually,
until then, we're going to keep on with Neville. Yes.
Well, we are, and in fact, something interesting has happened here. I have managed to get back into Facebook, so I'm going to try connecting the Facebook app one more time, just to see if we can get in there. Oh, nope, it still failed. So, okay, it was a forlorn hope.
It's all perfect, though. How do I know? Because this is what's happening, right?
Yep. Well, for whatever reason, we need to go this route, so let's find out why, and we'll just keep going.
So we're in the process of diving into Neville's book, The Power of Awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And the first chapter, I've been, wanting to make sure we remember where we're going. So the first chapter was on I am. Something that we talk about a lot with and without Neville is the idea of our I am stories.
Mm-hmm.
How powerful those stories are. the second chapter was on consciousness.
Yes.
And this chapter is called The Power of Assumption. And, you know, something interesting about that word when I see it is that when I was in coaching school, we learned about all kinds of things that happen with people that limit them, right? Like the idea of limiting beliefs, like the idea of what some coaches call gremlins.
Gremlins.
Right? It's like that little voice in your head that says you're not good enough.
Yeah.
And one of the things was assumptions. And there's a reason why in what I learned is that assumptions are really sometimes very difficult to overcome because they're based on past experience.
Mm.
So if I tell you, here's an interesting one today, right? Every time we try to get on Facebook, it fails.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so every time we try, we have that past experience of the last 5 times we've tried, and it keeps failing. It's weighing in energetically on what we're creating.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, that's just a little tiny example, but in our lives, sometimes we have much bigger examples, right?
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
Like someone says, well, every time I go out on a date, it's bad.
Yeah.
Right? And so what happens the next time they plan to go on a date? They're almost expecting it to fail, or whatever it is. Every time I try to learn whatever. And so those assumptions, but I have a feeling, because Neville says the power of assumption, that he's going to use the power of assumption in a different direction, right? In the right direction, in the direction of what we want, instead of having it empower the direction of something we don't want to happen again, right?
That would be his pattern, yeah. And one thing we can count on with Neville is we always have to have the decoder ring handy, right? We have to be able to translate his stuff, because so often it starts coming out one way and we make an assumption about it, and there's that word again. We make an assumption about what it is that he's saying, and then we realize, wait a minute, no, actually he's saying this other thing instead, or maybe even in addition to it, and now all of a sudden the whole picture changes in our minds.
Right. Well, I got excited when I saw it, because being trained to recognize assumptions and recognize when they're limiting us, I realized, wait, I think Neville is going to tell us how we can actually use that power.
Well, let's find out then.
So he says, man's chief delusion is his conviction that there are causes other than his own state of consciousness. That sounds like our conversation this morning.
Yeah,
right?
It does, right. Yeah.
All that befalls a man, all that is done by him, all that comes from him, happens as a result of his state of consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
A man's consciousness is all that he thinks and desires and loves, all that he believes is true and consents to. That is why a change of consciousness is necessary before you can change your outer world. I like that idea of consent. We're, to some degree, I think we talked about this when we did the Neville show, the live Facebook video, this past weekend, right? On Sunday.
Right.
We talked about that because someone brought up the idea of darkness as opposed to light. And so we got into a conversation about things going on in our life that we didn't want.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I made the comment that part of you actually wants it. At least part of you is consenting to it. Part of you is saying, okay, to it.
Which can be rather disconcerting, because very often the stuff that we're referring to when we say we kind of consented to it is the stuff we didn't want. And yet, like you say, we did consent to it. It's just we didn't really expect perhaps it was going to work out the way it did, but we did consent.
Right. Or sometimes there's a payoff and sometimes there's a counterintention. Mm-hmm. Like I remember a story. One of my colleagues tells a story about a client that she was coaching that, and whenever I tell client stories, they're always with permission. So I don't want anybody to think that us coaches are just running around talking about all their client stuff.
Right.
But this client actually ended up becoming a coach and shares her story herself. But the story was that she wanted to, get a job, have a career, and nothing she was doing was working. Mm. And it's just not working and not working and not working. come to find out, under the surface was that part of her thought that if she had a career, that she wouldn't be a good mother.
Wow.
And she had a really strong value around being with her kids and being a good mother. And so, it's like sometimes we allow ourselves to fail because that failure is actually us having a success in some other area. And sometimes we don't even realize what it is.
Right.
But when we can, and that's what coaches do, right? We dig down a little bit. We help you dig and excavate what's under there, what's really under there. And what was under there was her desire to be a good mother. And once she realized, I can do both things. I can definitely be a good mother and still work this job, or have a career. Everything started changing for her. And so you see that when Neville talks about I am, you see she had a value around I am a good mother. And her consciousness was helping her fulfill that idea because she had a limited idea of what that meant. And once she realized she could do both things, and they weren't exclusive, then it happened. So she was consenting to, the career failures.
Yeah, right.
The part of her that wanted to be a good mother and thought that if she was a good mother, that would be the only thing she was doing, was consenting to the reality that she was experiencing. So a man's consciousness or a woman's consciousness is all that he thinks and desires and loves, all that he believes is true and consents to. That's why a change of consciousness is necessary before you can change your outer world. Rain falls as a result of a change in the temperature in the higher regions of the atmosphere. So in like manner, a change of circumstance happens as a result of a change in your state of consciousness. Be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. To be transformed, the whole basis of your thoughts must change. But your thoughts cannot change unless you have new ideas. For you think from your ideas. I thought that was an interesting sentence.
It is.
It reminded me of Abraham saying that if you hold a thought for a certain amount of time, it will create a new thought that matches it.
Right.
Do I have that right?
Yes.
Is that the 17-second thing?
Yes, although I've been told it's now down to 14 seconds because the vibration of the planet has raised. But whatever the length is, yes, that's what happens after that first period.
We're making progress.
We're making progress, yeah.
Yes. So it says, for you think from your ideas. All transformation begins with an intense, burning desire to be transformed.
And by the way, regarding that previous sentence about your thoughts cannot change until and unless you have new ideas, that's actually more important than perhaps we realize. I can't remember who I had the conversation with, or maybe it was something I read, but somebody pointed out to me that we have all these thoughts every day, but they're the same thoughts. I mean, like 95% of what we think about every day is the same thing we thought about the previous day, and the previous day, and the day before that, and the day before that. We're very habitual with our thought patterns. So you've got to change the thought pattern, otherwise you're going to keep getting the same results because of our habitual pattern of repeating the same thing over and over again.
Well, I think this is why it's important for us to discover new things, to read books, read poetry, to view art, to read articles about politics.
You had to throw that in, didn't you?
To try new recipes, whatever it is. In other words, like you said this morning, you said, I shook up my routine a little bit.
Yeah.
And there's an idea that I actually heard from a therapist, like maybe 15 years ago. Somebody told me that their therapist had suggested to them that they change their morning routine.
Right.
And it was in really small ways. Like this guy said, if you normally drive to work one way, take a different route.
Take a different route, sure.
And when you get there, if you normally, take the elevator, take the stairs.
Mm-hmm.
Or go around the back of the building into the back door or whatever. If you normally, eat breakfast before you get dressed, do it the other way around. So he was talking about changing things up, and the reason why is because of just what you said. We get into habits, and so those neural connections in our brain, we've heard it described like if you're walking through a tall field, you kind of have to beat your way through the first time because the whatever's growing is so tall, you have to push it out of the way, stomp it down. But if you keep taking that path every day, pretty soon there'll be a dirt path there because things won't be growing because you'll be walking. And then pretty soon it's like a wide, easy path. You don't have to beat any of the, brush out of the way anymore. Mm-hmm. That's like the neural connections in our brain. And it's why we get better at things. It's why we have muscle memory. It's why
very true.
We can memorize things and then they become very easy for us and they become like why we drive home from work on autopilot because we do it so often.
Yep.
And so just like you said a minute ago, the same thoughts over and over and just think about if those thoughts are not the best thoughts. Just think about if those thoughts don't feel good. We talked about I keep thinking, was this Sunday or was this a conversation that I had with a client? One or the other, it might be both, talking about the pruning shears of revision.
Oh, yeah.
Revising a conversation, right?
Yeah. No, you mentioned that a few times on Sunday. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we're doing when we do that. When we have a conversation, I don't know about you, but I've had conversations before that were charged, that were triggering, that didn't feel good to me. And for some reason, my brain just wanted to remember them over and over. Right?
Yeah.
Like, I can't stop thinking about this thing that someone said to me and didn't feel good. And then I think about my response. And then I think, should I have had a different response? And somebody said to me recently, a client said, "Now, I really like to analyze things. I can analyze things to death." I was like, yeah, I get that.
Tell me about that.
And so when we revise it, just like when we find new things, when we shake up our routine, all those things are designed to create some different activity in our mind, in our brain.
Yeah.
And so when we want to renew our mind, we have to think about different things. It's pretty easy when you think about it that way, right? It's like, okay, I can do this. I can shake things up. But it's really hard when you have habits and especially if you're somebody who, like, I feel like I'm a creature of habit. If I find a thing in a restaurant that I really like, I'll just order it every time.
Yeah, we do the same thing. Absolutely.
Yeah, and somebody say, "Did you try this now?" Why? Well, because I don't know if it's any good and I know this thing's good.
That's right.
Good.
Yep. It's true. So, we do that so regularly. And it's also true that it does get in the way. I've really been noticing that lately in my own life. I mean, I do all these podcasts with you and Tom and Linda and Patty and Joel and everybody else. And despite the fact that we talk about, changing your thoughts, focus on what you want, not what you don't want, do all this. We talk about all this stuff all the time. And then I go back to my daily life and what do? I keep focusing on all the stuff that I don't want. And I'm thinking, what the heck am I doing? But nevertheless, I keep doing it. That's why I got up this morning and decided to shake up my pattern, in terms of how I was starting the day, because I knew I had to break this thing that I was in. I had to break this really strong habit that felt, and this is the thing that really gets me, it felt like I couldn't change it. That's the part that really just, it gnaws at me. Why am I continuing to feel that I can't change it when I know perfectly well that it's not true? And even as I say that, I realize that's even the wrong way of saying it. The better way to say it is, what can I do to change it? What can I do to change it? And when I start phrasing it that way, now all of a sudden I get the idea of, well, let's use the video camera built into the Blue Jeans platform. That way I can, have a new way of doing some mirror exercises. It's all about just the way we even look at the habits. The habits themselves, we have to change the way we look at them.
So we can change our perspective. It's not difficult. We just have to be willing and open to do it. And those little practices, like we were just talking about, doing things a little bit different, help. They help us be able to have a different perspective.
And you mentioned something very important. It's not difficult. I think part of it is being willing to acknowledge that even when it seems difficult, it really isn't. It's going to be an easy switch. We just have to do it. We just have to have something to change to and then make the change. We just have to do it. Because we so easily get caught up in, well, it doesn't feel like it's easy to do. I mean, I'm dealing with this bad feeling right now, and it's habitual, and it's been going on for the longest time. And, as I'm sitting here, I'm not feeling really good. And as I'm not feeling really good, I don't feel like I can really change it. I mean, how can it's so far away. How can I change it? I can't change that. That's the feeling of it, right? Well,
right, and that's why I think it's a good idea when we get there is to try to change some really small things that don't feel super important to us, right?
Yeah.
Like, like getting dressed before breakfast instead of after, or, things we're going to do anyway, or ordering something different.
Right.
Just little things that aren't, we maybe don't view those things as going to have like this huge impact on our life, but they will in their own small way because they allow our brain to kind of fire up a little bit.
So when Neville says to be transformed, the whole basis of your thoughts must change, it isn't like you have to do a whole blank slate, wipe it clean. You just have to start changing them.
Yeah, we don't have to like format or anything. We just have to, be willing to make some small tweaks and see what happens. So, and I love that. He also says though here that all transformation begins with an intense burning desire to be transformed.
Mm-hmm.
And, to me that goes back to that question, have you suffered enough?
Yeah, right.
It's a terrible question, right? But the truth is that until we have suffered enough, we don't make changes. And one day we're like, oh, okay, I cannot do this anymore, right? Whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
I have to change something. Something's got to change. I've had enough. I've suffered enough. Right? Something has to change. I think that's where that burning desire to be transformed happens.
I keep hoping that I'm one step closer to not just saying I've had enough, but I've had enough of suffering. I'm done with suffering. I'm so tired of suffering. Let's move on.
Suffering is optional, right?
It truly is.
Pain is inevitable. Like we're wired for pain.
Yep.
We are going to experience some painful things in life. That's part of the process. But suffering is the story that we're telling about the pain we're suffering. Suffering is the story we're telling about what's going on. So there's where the renewing of the mind comes in. And Neville says the first step in renewing of the mind is desire.
Yeah.
You must want to be different and intend to be before you can begin to change yourself.
It sounds so obvious when he says it that way, but there's the stumbling block right there. It sounds so easy, and it is easy. We just got to do it.
Well, it sounds easy until we start to consider what we might have to do to change ourselves. And sometimes it just feels like, do I really want to change all of the, I'm pretty good with the way things are, right? Because we're already where we are, so it's easy.
And sometimes the method of change blanks out sometimes. Have you noticed that? I mean, sometimes you're sitting in that place of not feeling good and suffering and all that kind of thing. And you're saying, okay, well, I know I got to make a change here. Otherwise, I'm going to keep right on suffering. And then you try to reach for that change, and the mind goes blank. Like, okay, So what is it I'm supposed to do? I can't think of anything. I know I'm supposed to change, but I don't even know what I'm supposed to change to.
Right. And so I always say, move your body. And I don't mean go to the gym and work out hard for an hour. I just mean get up and walk around. Because our body is indicative of our state. And we've talked about state a lot, right? Like if you notice somebody who's confident, they walk into the room standing up straight. If you notice somebody who is down and depressed, they may be hunched over, their head may be hung a little bit, right? So just when we're in a place where we are finding it hard to have the motivation or the wherewithal to make big changes and we're feeling down, sometimes just stretching, getting up, moving around, deciding, okay, let's have a different thought. What would feel better?
Yeah, it's true. But just the action of taking an action, just of shifting something around. It's that anything that we do that's a little different shakes things up, and that's a thing that we do that's a little bit different that shakes things up.
Go for a walk.
Go for a walk.
I'm talking to myself.
Yeah. Or maybe even go for, you don't have to go to the gym, but maybe go to the gym. Why not? If that's going to help shake you up, then go to the gym, whatever it takes.
Going for a walk, for some reason, always seems to help me process things if I feel stuck like that. I think it's just because it's getting out of my routine and doing something a little bit different than what I'm doing in that moment.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, the main thing is just picking something different. Anything. Just pick something different.
So Neville says you must want to be different and intend to be before you can change yourself. Then you must make your future dream a present fact. This is where we're going to talk about assumption.
Here we go.
You do this by assuming the feeling of your wish fulfilled.
There's the phrase.
By desiring to be other than what you are, you can create an ideal of the person you want to be and assume that you are already that person. If this assumption is persisted in until it becomes your dominant feeling, the attainment of your ideal is inevitable. Now, I want to throw something out there. It's a practical thing that I do whenever I'm going to create something new.
Yeah.
Someone else may have to figure out their own way of doing this, but for me, because I happen to be a woman who really loves makeup and nail polish and clothes and shoes, etc. And I don't have a lot of them because I've found the magic of the uniform.
Okay.
Seriously, I hate shopping. And so last winter when it got cold, I decided this in conjunction with creating something I wanted to create consciously. So I thought, who would that person be that had this thing? And I created a person, like he's talking about right here, right? He says to create an ideal of the person you want to be. So I created who I would be and what I would wear and what color of lipstick and nail polish I would wear if I were that person. And then I did those things. So what perfume I would wear, what kind of, I don't know, I have some incense in my office, so I picked one out. This is the one that person likes. This is what she eats. This is how she likes this and that. And I just adopted all those things. They were all things I liked, but I was particular about adopting those specific things to be part of this person I wanted to become that had these other things going on and were having these other successes in her life. And those helped me embody that new ideal. That makes sense?
So
it might just sound totally kooky to someone, but it works.
I hear you. Are you then saying that what you were doing was his sentence here or his phrase? You were assuming that you are already that person, or
yes.
So it was the assumption stage. It wasn't so much you were going out and buying this stuff and you were actually turning yourself into that person by look. You were getting into the feeling, the assuming part.
Well, I think it all went together. Like it was actually a conscious plan.
Oh, okay.
Right. Like I was imagining myself having certain successes that did come to pass. And as I imagined them, I imagined me, sort of me in the future, but it might just be a week in the future, right? I wasn't projecting 10 years away. I was just like, this is what, actually it was for the following year. I said, this is what I want to do this year. What do I look like? What does she look like? This ideal person that's having these successes. And I really got specific on some of the things as if I were describing someone else, right? I would say, if I was describing a person, I might say, well, he always wears a button shirt and a tie, right? Or, he looks like this. I would make a description. And so I was describing myself and then I just did it. I just started doing those things. And it allowed me to step into that identity in a very concrete, practical way.
And when you say that you started to do those things, what did you do? What were the doings that you did?
Well, it was pretty much everything I was doing. And I'm giving these ideas so that other people can adopt them to their own thing. But I wore a certain color. I decided I was going to wear red lipstick.
Ah, okay.
I was like, I got my hair cut a certain way. I decided I was going to wear red lipstick. I was going to wear, black. I was wearing a black turtleneck and that was my uniform. It was amazing. A black turtleneck, really nice black pants and a pair of black pointy flats. That was kind of a little Audrey Hepburn kind of look. And I decided this is it. And I bought a half a dozen pair of black, really nice black leggings and a half a dozen black turtlenecks and a really nice pair of shoes. And I really lived in that outfit all winter because it was perfect. I was like, this is awesome. I really love how it looks. And I don't have to like struggle over what I'm going to wear every day. It's like I have a whole closet of this little uniform. We call it my super suit.
Oh, okay.
Because there were some things I wanted to do professionally that just all happened once I stepped into that identity of that person that already had it. Mm-hmm. And so those are the things that I did. And, you know, I did spend money on clothes, but it wasn't, you know, I didn't spend thousands and thousands of dollars. I mean, I would have bought clothes anyway. I just bought a certain thing, but I had it in my head. What would she look like, this person that has this success? And so I don't know. I think it helped me. It was a practical thing I could do. And it can be any kind of thing that you can do.
Sure.
But it was like an object lesson. You know, it was something that I could do physically that brought me into the sense of already having the success that I had.
Well, the reason I asked my question, and you really evoked it beautifully with your description there, is what you really were doing was the equivalent of what an actor or an actress does when they put on their costume to go out and perform their role.
Correct.
You were getting yourself into character.
Yes. Exactly.
And in getting yourself into character, you were basically creating not only that character, but you were turning that character into the new you.
Yeah, it was the new me. And I do it every year.
So you do a different character every year. Okay.
Well, it's always me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just deciding, I'm finding new things I like and new things that I want to do.
Sure.
And I just connect those to the ideal of the person that has the things I want to have, the things I want to create that year.
So what you've done really is you've taken this idea of character creation and used it as a way of creating your little vignette of what it is that you want to have happen in your life and made it real by being the character. That's a very clever approach to creating the vignette, because now it's not just a visual vignette. Because Neville talks about how you want to be in the image, in the little 5-second video or whatever you want to call it. You want to be part of it. You want to be the person climbing the ladder rather than just observing the ladder, that sort of thing. Well, you found a way to climb the ladder by putting on the costume. That's pretty cool.
It's useful for me, very helpful. So to say, oh, okay, what do I want to accomplish this year? I want to write a book. And so, okay, I want to write a book that becomes a bestseller. So if I think of myself this year, a best-selling author, if someone else was describing me, if I was describing myself, what would I look like? What would I wear? What would I eat? What would I, and figure all those things out and then just put them into play, because that helps me step into that identity. And everything that we experience in life is always directly connected to our sense of identity. So we can change our identity just by changing some little things like that.
It occurs to me that what you're doing is very similar, maybe even the same, as what they've depicted in The Secret. If you'll remember, there's a portion of the film where you see this guy standing in front of a mirror, and he hasn't dressed himself yet, but in his mind he's dressing himself. He's putting on his shirt, he's putting on a tie, he's putting on his jacket. And he's putting on basically his costume for what he perceives to be this ideal person that he wants to become, who has, I forget what he wanted, but I think it was like he wanted to have a new car and he wanted to have a new career and be very successful and so forth. So he was putting himself into that successful mindset by dressing for it in his mind. Very similar to what you're doing. Yeah.
So it's helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny, as I'm reading what Neville's saying here, by desiring to be other than what you are, you can create an ideal of the person you want to be and assume that you are already that person.
Right.
If this assumption is persisted in until it becomes your dominant feeling, the attainment of your ideal is inevitable. The ideal you hope to achieve is always ready for an incarnation. But unless you yourself offer it human parentage, it is incapable of birth.
Human parentage, yeah.
So when you decide these things, you're just giving birth to that new identity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Therefore, your attitude should be one in which, having desired to express a higher state, you alone accept the task of incarnating this new and greater value of yourself. In giving birth to your ideal, you must bear in mind that the methods of mental and spiritual knowledge are entirely different. This is interesting, right? It says this is a point that's truly understood by probably not more than one person in a million.
Yeah, let's go back to that phrase. The methods of mental and spiritual knowledge are entirely different. The methods of mental... I didn't know that spiritual knowledge was a method.
Well, look what he says. He says, you know a thing mentally by looking at it from the outside. You were talking about this morning, right? External.
Uh-huh.
Know a thing mentally by looking at it from the outside, by comparing it with other things, by analyzing it and defining it, by thinking of it. Whereas you can know a thing spiritually only by becoming it, only by thinking from it. You must be the thing itself and not merely talk about it or look at it.
Mm-hmm.
You must be like the moth in search of his idol, the flame, who, spurred with true desire, plunging at once into the sacred fire, folded his wings within till he became one color and one substance with the flame.
Mm-hmm.
He only knew the flame who in it burned, and only he could tell who never to tell returned. So he's quoting from William Ralph Ing, Faith, Personal Religion and the Life of Devotion. He's talking about it sounds to me, if he's talking about a moth in the flame, he's talking about us willing to let go of who we are right now, right?
I guess so, which is an interesting choice because moths are known for their transformations anyway. I mean, they became a moth because they're originally a caterpillar that climbed into a cocoon and emerged a moth.
Right.
Now the moth is turning into something else in the flame.
Just as the moth in his desire to know the flame was willing to destroy himself, so must you, in becoming a new person, be willing to die to your present self. You must be conscious of being healthy if you are to know what health is. You must be conscious of being secure if you are to know what security is. Yeah,
those concepts don't willingly align themselves in most of our minds, but it's worth revisiting. So must you, just as the moth in his desire to know the flame was willing to destroy himself, so must you in becoming a new person be willing to die to your present self, which I interpret to mean you have to be willing to let go of what you currently are in order to get to where you want to be.
Yes, absolutely. And that's the thing, is that every big shift comes after a big letting go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's very hard sometimes for us to let go of what is.
So
to be willing to.
So if we start from that point of view, we go to the next paragraph where he said, you must be conscious of being healthy if you want to know what health is. You must be conscious of being secure if you want to know what security is. What he's also saying is you got to be willing to let go of that unhealthy. You got to be willing to let go of that insecure, because that's the old self or the present self.
Exactly. And see, sometimes when we're unhealthy and when we're insecure, like no one would probably consciously say, I want to be insecure. I want to be unhealthy.
This is true.
However, there are payoffs to that, right?
Annoyingly true.
Maybe people are feeling sad for me. Maybe people are giving me extra attention because I'm unhealthy.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe people are calling and checking on me. Maybe I have someone that actually does something for me on a consistent basis.
Right.
And it feels like love to me that they're doing this for me.
Yeah.
And if suddenly I get well and I can do everything on my own, maybe they won't check on me anymore. Maybe I won't have the level of love that I have right now or attention that I have. Same with security. Maybe I'm not financially secure. And because of that, certain things are going on in my life that on some level, some part of me really loves because they feel good. Maybe I want someone to take care of me.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I want, people, whatever it is. We all have payoffs and counterintentions. So a counterintention is when we're intending consciously one thing. Oh, I intend for my business to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
But the counterintention is, oh my gosh, if I get really successful, I'm going to be so busy.
Mm-hmm.
I'll never have time to have fun with my friends. I won't get to take these long walks every day. I won't get to spend all this time I'm spending, creating, I don't know, whatever I'm creating, because I'll be in my office working. So there's a counter intention. Part of me is saying, oh, I don't really want to be that busy. Success means I'm going to be in my office all day.
And yet if we want that success, we got to let go of it.
Right? And so even though we think we'd never say we want certain things, we're getting something out of it. Yes. And it's hard to let go of. Mm-hmm. It's always worth it usually when we let go because we have a big shift and we recognize, oh, I still have all these, I still have love, I still have, I still have time. Mm-hmm. Right?
It's a good point though, because until we let go of that stuff, we can't get there, and yet we don't want to let go of it. For the reasons you gave, and that's a good awareness to have, because if we are aware that we're hanging on to stuff because there is, like you say, some payoff for it, I think it makes it much easier in that situation to decide truly, do I want to let go of it? Am I really willing to let go of that? And knowing that if I say, no, I'm not willing to, then the first thing I ask for probably isn't going to manifest the way I want it to. But now we have the power back in us again, because now it's our choice. It no longer seems like this blank wall that we can't penetrate, or this habit that just seems outside of our control. Now it's back in our choice, because now we recognize what we're aiming for and what we're deciding whether or not to let go of.
Well, and I always call it radical responsibility, right? Mm-hmm. It's the idea that we're responsible for everything. It's really the idea of what Neville said at the very beginning of this chapter in this sentence, all that befalls a man, all that's done by him, all that comes from him, mm-hmm. happens as a result of his state of consciousness. Right. And when we're willing to say okay to that, and take responsibility for our response to everything that's going on, it's a place of power.
It is.
But when we're down there in that hard to stomach place, the place of being uncomfortable, the place of not liking what's going on, down in the dumps, we call it sometimes, or feeling really low, sometimes that just feels like we want to blame someone else. We're saying it's not my fault that all these things are happening. Yeah. Because we're still in that energy of fault and blame, which is a mm-hmm. energy way down there, right? If we step up just a little bit to the energy of responsibility, it's like, I'm not blaming myself. I'm not blaming anyone. The energy of blame isn't present. I'm just recognizing that I want to change things and that I can change things. So I'm going to step up into the place of responsibility and take radical responsibility for everything that I experience in my life.
That's a big step.
And how I experience.
Yeah, it's a big step, but it's an important one, because when we take that step, when we get to the point where we're ready to make that determination, even before we've determined, even before we've selected, just being willing to make that determination is where we get our power back.
Yes, exactly. And it's a really wonderful thing.
It is.
I mean, the energy level will shift when we make that decision. And when it does, it feels wonderful. Mm-hmm. And that's where we can continue the shift. We can continue to let go of things that aren't working and be open to a new identity.
Which is a very good thing. The only thing that we have trouble continuing with is the podcast, because we're running out of time.
We're out of time.
Well, we're not completely out, but we're down to our last minute. So I don't think we're going to finish the chapter today, but that's right. We can do that tomorrow morning. Before we go, though, I want to give people the opportunity to know about reaching out to Cindy Chavez, because clearly she's a really good life coach. She really knows this stuff down pat. So if somebody wants some personal attention, how do they reach out to you?
They can reach out to me at my website, cindychavez.com. It's CINDIECHAVEZ.com. And there's a contact form there. And I'd love to hear from you. Give me a shout.
Yeah, it's great when we hear from people. When we hear from our listeners, I'm sure you get this. I get this, like this little jolt inside, like, oh yes, I heard from another one. How cool is that?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I love getting an email saying, was listening to you and Walt discuss Neville, and
yep.
It's like, hey!
Hooray! Yeah, it feels really good. So I'm looking forward to continuing the conversation tomorrow. I hope you have a great day.
And I hope you do too. I'll be back tomorrow.
And we'll all be back. We hope that you'll join us every single time that we do these shows here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.